Jack! I guess you're booking this. You had questions for me.
Jack O'Hara. Boy, you asking me some interesting questions, my man.
Jack, hey, it's Josh Radder.
Hey there, Jack O'Hara. It's Johnny Damon.
Jack O'Hara, absolutely.
What's up, Jack?
Well, Jack.
You know, those are some good questions, Jack.
Hey, Jack. How you doing,
Hello,
man?
Bob Saget. How's it going, man?
Jackie, what's going on, man?
What's going on, Jack? Listen, man, you know, you asked me a couple questions.
Jack, right?
That's right, man.
Hey, Jack.
Jack O'Hara.
Anybody call you John?
It is another edition of the O Show podcast, live from Las Vegas.
Walk with me, buddy.
Get it started. This is the O Show, episode 541, ladies and gentlemen. We are presented by TickPick. You ever use the app TickPick, Nick?
I haven't.
So like StubHub, Ticketmaster, SeatGeek, if you go to any sporting events. TickPick is the #1 marketplace when it comes to buying tickets in the country that allows no hidden fees. So you buy a ticket for $20, you're getting it for $20. Or if you're going to a Diamondbacks game and it's $5 out here, because they're the worst team in baseball, they're $5 tickets. So use the promo code capital OSHOW20, OSHOW20. You get $20 off. You can pay negative $15 for a Diamondbacks game if you want to. But use that promo code, guys. Nick Arapkiles.
That's correct, man.
Thank goodness. Because there have been times I used to do PA announcing for the Angels in spring training.
Okay.
And there was an old man's league that came by once, and there was a man named Alan, and his last name, I figured it out, was pronounced Penis, but it was spelled, you know, the other word. So I'm like, I'm up there, and I'm like, I don't know what this is. And I said Penis, but everybody looked up at me and was just kind of like chuckling. They're like,
got the laughs.
you know, like you were going to get it anyways. But I'm glad. I always take great pride in being prepared when it comes to really difficult last names like yours.
Yeah, very few people have gotten it. So
that's good. Well, we were. I saw Josh Norris got it right too. A mutual friend of ours.
Did.
So
he was one of the other guys that got it right. So
he's an old man though. So. One of the best old men I know in the area.
He's great.
But we were just talking about content creation before we actually went and pressed that red button to record. You're learning a bunch of different things because you got your phone here too,
right,
which you're able to create content right away when it's going to take probably a couple days to get this all edited and sorted out. Sure. You know, it's like really smart. You got your tripod with you. I'm not even at that stage yet. I don't know why I'm not doing that because you can put this stuff out right away and cut it into clips.
Yeah.
So what have you learned the most from content creation in that aspect when it comes to the episodes that you're putting out? Because everybody knows Just Grow podcast, I feel like at this point, at least in our community in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area, because you do live nobody else is doing the live podcast platform out here. And you're able to bring in like 200, 300, 400 plus people. Like you move the shows from your apartment complex to the theater, you know, like that's a big step in the right direction. So how have you kind of gone about knowing how to create content when it best values the audience when all these specific stories are being told?
Yeah, man. I mean, great question. I mean, my take is that it's always about like, okay, you can bring the camera and you can do all those things, but it really comes down, from my perspective, it comes from the conversation, and specifically a podcast, obviously. But it's just like the actual content, right? What are we talking about? What's the message? And I think that's the most important part. Obviously, we can get fancy and have the 4K footage and have the nice Shure mics that you have provided us with. But, you know, for me, it's always the message. And, like, what is that message really saying? What's it about? And, like, what's it doing and who's it helping? So I think that's the basis of everything, and that's, I mean, ultimately why I started the podcast is, like, I wanted to have great conversations. I was already having great conversations. I just wanted to start recording it. And so, you know, we started out in my apartment complex, and we still do some there, and now we've graduated a little bit. But then obviously, like, if the message there, then obviously then the quality, it only helps if you raise the quality. So then it's just a matter of hiring people and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, you're looking to provide value for people, right? And we all started in like the basement or in the living room, you know, like I started when I was 17 in my mom's basement, you know, like we all have a starting place. And then you realize what your specific calling is and what's inspiring people and what's providing the most value. Because like we said, like there's a ton of people showing up to your events, and for the most part, all the same people from the same community that you've built really close, cool friendships with, not only through the show, but friendships you probably had beforehand too that have helped support it and watched it grow over time. And obviously, you know, like you mentioned, 4K using was it a Lumix camera? I don't even know. I think I pronounced Canine one time, and they're just like, that's not right. So, but like you have all of these really nice high-end technology assets that you can bring to the table that makes it look really good and professional. It obviously goes a long way, but if the message isn't there, it's not going to matter at all. And people are going to pick up on that fairly quickly. So like before we came on, you said like it's a pretty simple setup doing it out of the apartment complex. Like that's a cool little area to do it in that room and having the big screen behind you with the logo and everything. Like it's not like you make it seem like it's not a big deal, but like that's a pretty cool setup.
It is. I feel very blessed and fortunate that I have that set up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because like some people like walk through, and we just always kind of crack up like, what are they doing walking through our studio right now? But yeah, it's amazing, and it was such a great piece of the story where it all started. So it's amazing, and yeah, I'm just really grateful. You mentioned the people, and yeah, I've been able to build some amazing friendships and relationships over the years. But I just feel so fortunate that I have all these people. I remember my friend Braxton said that, you know, the coolest thing about him is the people he knows. And I 1000% agree. Like you know, the conversations would still be there, but you know, the traction and the events has really started building because of the people that really believe in supporting the vision. So I do my best to really remember that and be grateful for it, because it is something that's not real common.
It unfortunately and evidently is not. Like Braxton saying that is just like, you're all working really hard to accomplish what each and every single one of you are trying to accomplish, and everybody else has a unique backstory, right? You know, obviously we watched Dylan Waters' podcast, the one you did with Braxton, the one you did with Michael Law, the one you did with Devin Butler.
Mm-hmm.
You know, did I get his name right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Because I'm like Devin Butler. Okay, cool. Arizona entrepreneurs. Quick shout out there. Everybody has a unique story to tell, where like if you're surrounding yourself with the same group of people who have the same philosophies and the same like routine in life, you're just going to be stuck in one place. So to have the ability to have a community of people who all support each other, that all have different backgrounds and all have like different crazy stories, like that makes life exciting.
Yeah, and I think everyone has a crazy story, because it's interesting. After I did one, someone made mention, oh, that person has a crazy story, and I don't know, I really truly believe that. I think everyone has a crazy story if you tell it. Most people don't tell it, and I think that's the beauty in a podcast, and I think you obviously get it, is yeah, how often do we actually sit down and have these type of conversations? For me, like, yeah, a little bit more, but like I think it is kind of rare, because I remember when I had one of my buddies, Matt Proud, on. Shout out Matt, he's a legend. But we've been good friends for years. And then I was like, hey, dude, let's jump on and record a conversation. And we ended up having a conversation before that for like an hour, maybe even two. And then the podcast, which was about an hour. And I was like, if we didn't sit down and say, hey, let's record this and have this conversation, it probably never would happen. I've been friends with him for years, but yeah, I learned so much more by sitting down and having a conversation. I feel like at that same time, we literally just scratched the surface. And so, I don't know, I'm very passionate about just conversation and connecting and sharing. That's really what this comes down to at a very core level. That's what it's about.
It's kind of a weird dynamic too, because I feel like me reaching out to you, I want to get to know your story, you know? Having it on a platform, of course, helps, you know, and it spreads the word and provides value for people that you don't know that you're going to touch. Like, that's the coolest thing about it. Like, you never know who's listening, who's going to reach out and be like, hey, I really like this episode. I'm like, oh my God, people are actually listening to this, you know?
Right.
But it's a weird dynamic, because you said, like, you and your friend would have never had that conversation if it wasn't on, or if it wasn't, like, in the setup of, like, let's do a podcast. Let's show out this message, right, to the universe. Where, like, you could have easily had it just, like, sitting at a bonfire or on the couch, right? But, like, for some reason, people really get excited about, like, having conversations with the microphones, having it be on camera. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's because it's on camera. right? It's kind of a weird dynamic there. I don't know if I'm explaining it that
Sure.
well.
No, I thought it was interesting because one of the first times I went camping, it was like just a couple years ago now, and we were just having an incredible conversation. And I was like, we should have recorded that. And like that's kind of where the basis of the podcast came from. It was like it wasn't about, hey, let's go make a production and you know, set up and get the microphones. It was like, we're already having amazing conversations. Why don't we record them? Because then we could go back to them first and foremost, and then, all right, well, let's post it on social media and these platforms, and maybe someone else could get value from it. Because I got so much value from just having conversations. I really realized that, because I used to read so many books and courses and events and stuff like that, but I was starting to realize how powerful it was for me just to have a conversation. I was having all these realizations and learning so much from the person I was talking with. I was like, that was insanely valuable. And I thought about it more, and I was like, well, I'm willing to bet like other people would deem that valuable as well. So like that's really where it came from for me. Like, and I love that that's the case, because it felt so organic to start a podcast. It wasn't like, oh, it's a good business move, it'll help me generate more leads. It's turned into that, but that's not where it came from. And I think the fact that it is so organic, and that's really what it was and is, it feels so good. It feels so right. It feels so aligned. I've never felt so aligned with doing something like this. And now that I've like actually turned it into a business, it just feels incredible. Not only that, I'm like finally able to generate income and revenue off of, but I'm impacting people like I never have before, and that's all I've ever wanted to do.
Do you ever catch yourself like on the business side thinking like, I got to get this out, I got to organize this, I got to organize like the next live show, but at the same time you got to remember like this is why I started it. Like it happened organically through like the thing that was setting my soul on fire, you know, through my heart, as opposed to like now you're monetizing it. Now it's a business. Now this is what you're doing, you know, like it's two hard things to separate, I feel like, at times.
Oh yeah, dude, great question. And I even, you know, even like the last event, I was starting to get a little bit stressed about it. I've gotten stressed from time to time. It's just been a wild ride. It really has. It's a lot of ups and downs. But I really do my best to remind myself of that. Fortunately, I have some really good people in my corner that remind me too. But it's like, I remember on the second event with Brie Morrison, you know, the first event was such a success. People loved it. So many people told me how amazing it was. My first opportunity to actually speak in front of a real crowd that came for me. It felt like my first real speaking engagement. But I caught myself on that second event. I was like, well, shit, has to be more people, and you know, I have to get better responses. I have to get more validation. And I did. I caught myself, and I was like, no, that's not what it's about. It's about the conversation. It's about this right here. And you know, if 100 people show up, all the better. If 5,000 people show up, cool. But like that always is, you know, the icing on the cake. You know, and I think the minute that you start relying on that and you get too focused on that, it has to be bigger, it has to be better, it has to generate more sales. That's when it's going to repel people. I truly believe that, because it's like the energy that you show up. It's going to attract that people or detract people depending on how you approach it. So don't get me wrong, like, or don't get it twisted. Like, I still have my challenges, but I do my best to like really remind myself of that, because it is pretty amazing. I remember when I started this, I said, if I could make a bunch of money just having dope conversations, like, sign me up. Like, I'm there. That's what I want to do. So. Yeah.
And it's very hard to do. You know, it doesn't happen overnight, you know?
Yeah.
And when you say it doesn't happen overnight, it doesn't happen over like a couple of months, couple of years for some people, you know? It's all about finding that right audience. At one point, because I know you were pretty nervous the first live show you ever did, right? Like, obviously, like, handing out the flyers for like this first ever podcast party. Like, did you think that like, okay, this could be big, but then again, like 5 people might show up?
Dude, I had no idea what was going to happen. I had the idea on top of a mountain, and I was like, I think this sounds cool.
Yeah.
But I have no idea what's going to happen. In fact, like, Braxton didn't even get back to me until like Tuesday, and we were going to throw it on Saturday. I was like, all right, I guess we'll make a flyer, send out some DMs. And then, I don't know, like 60, 70 people showed up, and I was like, wow, like people like it. And they kept on asking, when's the next one? I keep getting that question all the time. So, you know, if people keep
It's a
asking.
good question.
If people keep
It's a good
asking, I'm
question
going to
to
keep
ask.
throwing them. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And at what point did you make the move to the theater? Because obviously the crowds were getting bigger and bigger, and you couldn't fit everybody in the apartment complex in that one room.
Well, it was the third one. And the third one shifted everything because, I mean, there's over 220-ish people at that one when the capacity said 143.
Yeah.
So like at that point, but it was also kind of like the context of what we were sharing. All of a sudden, I had all these people standing in line waiting to talk to me, and I didn't even know half of them. And you know, you were there. We shared some intimate, vulnerable stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just realized at that point, it was like, this isn't just a small thing anymore. This is like actually making a strong impact on people like I've never seen. Like I've been around the personal development space for a long time, and it's just like that night was something I've never experienced, and I know a lot of other people felt the same. So I was like, all right, well, maybe we should start turning this into an actual thing instead of let's all hang out at an apartment complex. So yeah, we did our best to figure out what was a good venue. Had no clue. We sifted through a bunch of stuff. Venues are a challenge.
Oh yeah.
But we found one that was right, and we went for it, and we did it.
I think the coolest aspect of it, like you talk about it being like kind of a big hangout. Obviously, like you're talking to your guest, people are listening intently, but at the same time, like everybody's support, like it's a whole community of people that really like each other and vibe off of each other's energy. I think the coolest thing is that when you take that moment of silence to have like that 3 deep breaths and close your eyes before the show. I'm like, I've never experienced anything like this. Like everybody is like in tune with what's going on. I don't think there was one person in there that was just like, what's going on here? You know, I think everybody was just like, this is great.
Yeah.
Like this feels so good too, before you start having a really intimate conversation with someone that is going to, you never really know what kind of conversation is going to change someone's life, you know?
No, you don't. You really don't. You never know who's listening and what's going to hit for them. But just to touch on the breathwork stuff, that's been huge in my life, and my spiritual development is what's really opened me up and allowed me to, you know, understand myself so much more, and honestly what's eventually led to this. But yeah, it's incredibly powerful, especially when you're in a group of people, when we're all in sync and we're all breathing together. It sounds like one audible breath. I remember at the one we did with Dylan, I noticed, I was like, whoa, this is wild. This is really wild. And like to do that at every event, it's imperative in my opinion. And it's imperative for me because I mean, it gets a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting ready to go speak in front of a bunch of people. And so that really calms me down and grounds me, and I know it's the same way for everybody. So yeah, when we're about ready to have a really good conversation, you know, I want people to be very intently listening. So yeah, it's essential. I mean, I even just did a little bit right before I jumped in here. It's a staple for me.
It's nice. Have you done that like a long time? Like when did that start for you?
It all started. I mean, everything kind of started about 3 years ago now. November 5th, 3 years ago, I tore my pectoral tendon, and that shifted everything for me. It was this freak accident, but sent me down a much more spiritual path.
Yeah.
Got much more into like the Joe Dispenza work, meditation, but then breath work. My friend Ryan McBurney, I always shout him out because he's the one that got me into all this, and he's a breathwork practitioner. I've gone to some of his events, and he's done some one-on-ones for me, and it I don't know, it's really hard to describe with words, but once you like go and do that, it's a whole nother experience, because like your body feels like it's vibrating, and you get to this place where you really feel so present and in the moment. And that's, you know, a comment that a lot of people have told me is like, you seem very present. I attribute it all to like that whole practice and being conscious of staying present in the moment. It's truly where life exists, in my opinion.
You're obviously very good at it. You're a big outdoorsy type too, right?
Yeah, it's essential for me. It really is. I think especially in today's day and age more than ever, when we're surrounded by all this blue light, Bluetooth, whatever we call it, all this technology, all these screens, I get so bugged out on them, and I know everyone does, and they back it up by science. Like literally our brains are in called beta brain waves. They're just going back and forth really quick. And what meditation does is slowing down. It slows down those brain waves, and it actually puts us in a place where we were like when we were young. But now we're like also stressed out. And so if you're not consciously taking that time to go disconnect from all this stuff, it'll wreak havoc on you after a while.
Oh my God. You ever see pictures of like little kids compared to like either their parents or even people like relatively close to our age and how like pure they look?
Yeah.
I'm like, is this really like, this is all stress? This is why I look like so much more, like not bad, but like, we look like we've been through our fair share of failures and trials and tribulations in life. Like it kind of like wore on us.
Yeah. Life can wear you down, but it also can be amazing and beautiful, and it's just how you approach it, in my opinion. I mean, we all go through our challenges, but yeah, I'm constantly saying this a lot, but I really think a spiritual practice and slowing down, and like even one thing that's been helpful, I haven't done it as much as I'd like to, but like one day a week is take just completely off your phone, no screens, nothing, and just take a day away from all that. And I think, because the more I get sucked into the content, and obviously it's great tools and it allows us to connect and it's awesome, but like we really can get sucked into it. I know for me personally, I can definitely. So I have to set specific parameters in place, specific boundaries, making sure that I'm not spending too much time on these devices, because it's not a direct link, but they do say it is a correlation that the more time you spend on your devices, the higher the likelihood you're going to be depressed. And that's scary, because we know how much people are spending in front of screens. I mean, you could argue, I don't know the exact data behind it, but you could argue that most people are spending like half or even 3/4 of their day on their phones and their devices.
Oh yeah, I'm one of them. Like you can't sleep before bed. It's like, what's going on Instagram? What's going on TikTok? And you just scroll down the feed, and like you never really know what avenue that's going to take you down. Especially like if something like my buddy was out with so and so, or like my comedian buddy met Joe Rogan. It's like part of you is just like, oh man, like should have been there, and then like little things like that trigger you, and it's just like, because like I don't know if you've been through experiences like that, but you're just like not like jealous, but at the same time it's just like, what can I be doing better in my own life right now,
Oh yeah, it's designed. It's an intricate system, because again, they're amazing tools for sure. I mean, it's a huge reason on why I've been able to build the podcast and the company and everything like that. But it also is very addictive, and that's how they designed it. And the way things become addictive is that it's basically something that makes you feel better because you're not feeling great. And have you seen the documentary? What's it called? It's on Netflix. The Social Dilemma.
Oh yeah, The Social Dilemma.
That's scary.
Everybody walked away from that like, oh my God. And then it probably wore off after like a week, and then they just went back to what they were doing.
Exactly. But it's the truth, man. Like, we literally are addicted to these devices. And I catch myself a lot just scrolling. I'm like, what am I doing here? And I want to get off. And sometimes I'm like, I don't even have the capabilities to do it, because I'm just like, just used to it, And so it's important to put those parameters in place and make sure that you're like limiting your time. And I haven't, like, one of the biggest things that's helped me is not putting my phone next to my bed. I have it out in my kitchen. So when my alarm goes off, I wake up. You
have to get out of bed.
Get out of bed. Because I think one of the worst things that you can do is be in your bed on your phone. That's terrible, because you'll stay stuck.
That's the laziest thing I've ever heard too, right? And it's easy, like your alarm goes off, just hit snooze. You're good. Or if you just turn it off, you just go back to sleep. I've been through it a million times, Like, that's smart. Like, I put mine on my my dresser, like, all the way across the room, because you have to get out of bed, and like that's going to wake you up to turn off that alarm.
Yeah.
Especially if you're living with someone, nobody wants to hear that, Yeah. You're going to have to get out of bed. I mean, that's such a you find out little different life hacks on a daily basis, You talked about it from content creation to little things like that help your overall mental state, especially in today's day and age when everybody's trying to everybody's supporting each other, but everybody's trying to outwork each other too at the same time, you know, especially if you're in the same field. It can get difficult.
Exactly. I heard a quote a while back that said, people want you to do great, but never better than them.
Yeah. What do you think of that quote, though? Because, like, a part of you is just like, oh, that's a neat mentality to have, and not everybody has it, you know? I feel like there's a lot of people who should be well more driven to accomplish the things that they want to accomplish, not necessarily what they think they can accomplish, just because they haven't found that confidence yet. But then there's that, you know, other side of it, you know, the opposite side of that coin where it's just toxic of wanting to just be better than everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of depends on like who you're hanging out with, and that's why I've lately become a lot more. I like the word strategic, but just like careful, I would say, with like
Who you spend your energy with.
Yeah, and you know, fortunate for me, I feel like I just keep attracting in amazing people, and you know, the people that are supposed to continue to stay in your life, they do, and the people that aren't, don't. It's just kind of interesting how it happens. Even lately, I've had some people kind of like fizzle out of my life, and I kind of question it. But then I'm like, oh, well, yeah, that probably makes sense because this is the direction I'm going, and it's probably a different direction than where they're going. But I think it always comes down to values. Like, what are your core values? And if you're not aligned with somebody on the values, then it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to continue to spend time and energy with them. But it also kind of depends on like what your goals are. Like if you're just looking to hang out and connect with anybody and everybody, that's one thing. But like if you're looking to build a 7-8 figure company, then you probably want to hang around with people that are on that same wave.
Doing the same thing or have already done it.
Yeah.
You know, like you're a configuration of who you're surrounding yourself with. Like another one of those like old cliches is like if you're hanging around 5 millionaires, you'll be the 6th, you know, something like that. Like David Meltzer has all those like neat little nuggets of what he's talking about. Another shout out to Blake Hahn and Michael Law. They're going to have him doing a signing and a live podcast. What is it? Millionaires to Billionaires. I got that wrong on the podcast last time. I'm getting it right today. Millionaires to Billionaires podcast. That's on the 16th or the 19th? 19th in Peoria.
Yeah, it's a Wednesday. We decided to sponsor it, so we're really excited to go to that.
Hell yeah.
A little speaking segment to talk about the vision videos.
Because it's all coming together, like everybody is in the same boat, you know? Like you provide so much value with those vision boards to them and vice versa, because you guys are all in the same community and surrounding yourself and wanting to interact with like the David Meltzers of the world and people who have seen it and done it and failed and succeeded and failed again and got back, you know, climbed that ladder again, you know? Have you ever like been in a situation where you're able to ask someone like, how did you go through that and like pick yourself back up in a sense, whether it was like a very traumatic experience or whether it was just like, you know, life happens and not everything's going to go your way. You pick yourself back up. Like, have you ever been in a situation where you're able to ask someone, how did you get past that? So I don't necessarily have to go down that route, because there's a lot of people who write a lot of books and do a lot of podcasts who talk about their experiences. So other people who are listening don't necessarily have to do it the hard way like they did, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think I truly believe that podcasting is a hack, a life hack.
Yeah.
If you do it right and you're building relationships with the person that you're talking with. But yeah, dude, that's why I love it. I think it gives you perspective that you wouldn't normally have. Instead of me having to go and figure out all these business decisions and hire mentors and stuff like that, which I do, but like I treat every podcast like it's a coaching session. And I'm asking, like, I know a lot of people, I don't know what your perspective is on this, but I'm like, yes, I know my audience and I know what kind of questions they would want to hear, but I'm genuinely asking the stuff that I'm curious about.
Oh, yeah.
Because like I have this opportunity. I'm sitting down with most time incredible people that have done incredible things. It would be silly for me not to ask questions to like see like, how did you overcome that? What did you do in that situation? What helped you, you know, go to the next level? Why wouldn't I ask those questions? Because I'm sitting down, these people charge, sometimes you can't even get access to them like that. But like,
yeah. And 9 times out of 10, you're asking questions they've never heard of.
Yeah.
which makes it unique.
I love that. I kind of love stumping people where they're like, oh, I never heard that. They have to take a couple seconds to think. But I think that is the cool thing, is like helping people think, like moving, like instead of like just being on this, because all the people that just go on the podcast and tell the same story after, like, I don't want to do that. I want to have a real conversation where we're actually connecting and building a relationship. Because again, I've said this from the beginning, is I'm building this podcast one person at a time. And that's the person I'm doing the interview with. If people start listening and gravitating towards it and sharing it and it grows like that, great. But it is a serious win for me to just continue to build relationships. I've always been that way, and now I'm just doing it in a public fashion.
Have you ever had a guest on yet that you not necessarily like lost contact with, but just like didn't really like feel like you really grew the relationship after that?
That's a good question. I mean, I would say it's kind of a scale. I think.
I mean, everybody's busy too,
Right. Yeah, and it also kind of depends on why or would we want to continue that relationship? Is there business opportunity? Can I connect them with someone? Can they connect someone with me? Are we just want to go grab food? Or so like there's definitely people that I've really developed strong relationships and even business partnerships with. But then there's also people that we just had a great conversation, and then we just stay connected on social or whatever. So I think it's just a degree. I don't think anyone's like really fallen off, because I'm pretty specific. I don't necessarily just take anybody, especially nowadays. I don't just take anybody, and people are constantly asking. So now I kind of have a little bit more of a vetting system. I'm sure you get it.
Yeah.
And I think that's important too, and it's interesting too, because I'm sure you get this all the time, but like there's people that just want to be on because they see you have a platform, they can get some exposure. There's one person that we got on a call, and this was early in my like vetting process. I didn't even now I kind of have like a questionnaire I have people ask if I don't know who they are. Most time I'm reaching out to people that I want on. But like this guy, we had this conversation, and it just dawned on me like 10 minutes in, probably sooner, like 5 minutes. And I'm like, have you listened to any of the episodes? Like, which one's your favorite? He's like, oh, I haven't got a chance to listen. Because I was asking him, why do you want to be on? And he's like explaining, like, had nothing to do with like, I love the podcast. I want to connect with you. I love what you're doing. It's like, no, well, he's basically saying, I mean, without saying, he's like, I want a place to advertise. And I was like, come on, dude.
What was his story? Like anything?
Yeah.
Any platform at all?
No, I mean he had a good business idea. They'd been running a company, and it seemed somewhat valuable. But the fact that you didn't care at all to even listen to an episode or even say anything about it, like I was like,
It's kind of a cheap plug for him, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, not to say anything bad about that, but it was a big learning lesson for me to be like, okay, well, let's be smart about this, and it helped me get more clear on who I do want to connect with and have on, because again, it's about having good conversations that can nowadays lead places that's going to benefit and add value to both of us. Because if we're not doing that, then what's the point?
You're like coming together. You're this team for one night, like you're collaborating. It's not just like I'm interviewing you to get your stuff out there, especially like if it's nothing interesting. Like I'm sure if like I'm trying to like if Devin Booker wanted to come on your show just to promote something, you'd make it happen.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But
I mean, there's always rules and exceptions, but like for me, it really is like, do we vibe? Because like for me, and it sounds like this is the case for you as well, is it's less of an interview, and I think it's more of a conversation.
Those are the best shows.
Yeah, I don't want to be sitting here and just like drilling you with question after question after question. I want to give you my input with my thoughts. If I disagree, I'll tell you. Most time I don't. I haven't come across that much, but yeah, like that's the way it should be, and that's the way it's organic, so it doesn't like feel scripted or weird.
That's TV. I went to school for journalism, and in the broadcast side, that's what it is. Like approved questions, like try to make it sound as conversational as possible, but just know like there's bullet points, Which when I started this show, I'm just like I don't even like I have like the bullet points in my head. Of course, like I have to know about the person I'm talking to. I wouldn't have reached out to them if I didn't.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be a conversation where I'm just gonna be bouncing off of what they're telling me. And being intrigued. Like that's how you can tell you're a really good listener and a good interviewer is when you're actually paying attention to the guest and you're not thinking like, okay, question number 2 is coming up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what kind of blows my mind is when people say, "Oh, well, here's the pre-questions. Here's what we're going to talk about." I'm like, I mean, it's good to have like a general structure, in my opinion, but again, as I've mentioned a few times, is like I'm all about like making it organic and feel aligned and making sure that like everyone feels comfortable and are enjoying it, not like this rigid structure that has to do this, and then this.
It's so refreshing to hear that because a lot of people, like even I'll have guests on, and granted, if they're like a bigger guest promoting something, it's like, can we touch on this, and then you can ask about anything else you want, but like, get the promotional plug out of the way, like that's what's making you money, and I understand that, but you're also, the number one important thing is like, you're not building this platform or this podcast or this show if you're not building the relationships that you're sharing through the conversations that you're having too. Because you don't know where the conversation is going to lead, and you don't know, like you talk about clicking with someone, right? If you click with someone, you want to continue to be a part of what they're growing in their lives and, catapult that into relationships and friendships. And then you get to a point where you're doing events together. You're sponsoring Blake and Michael's gig with David Meltzer, like you're all providing each other value, and you're all growing together. You're all succeeding together. You're all making money together. You're going down avenues and routes you didn't think you were going to go down through just having one simple sit-down conversation, and an intimate conversation at that too. Like you could go to a networking event or a party and have a conversation with someone. It's very like, you can, if you get to a point where you're like in the corner having a cool conversation with someone, but it's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult to possess that same energy if you're just in a room with 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, whatever it is, and asking genuine, heartfelt questions through what they're preaching and what they're speaking through their heart.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find.
Yeah. I think that kind of comes back to what we talked about before, but just like providing that space and saying like, let's sit down, let's have a conversation. And it just like gives people that opportunity to have that, because you mentioned about networking parties, and they're great. I've gone to, I mean, most of the ones I go to is the AZ Entrepreneurs, but, I think there's always this like balance that you're looking to strike at a networking thing is, oh, do I want to connect with this person, or do I want to kind of like keep bouncing around? Do I want to go deep with this person for 10, 20, 30 minutes, or do I want to go make a bunch of connections so I can eventually make better connections, more connections? So you're always going to have a little bit more of that fragmented attention, but if you sit down and say, hey, we're going to sit down for 45 minutes to an hour and we're going to go deep and really connect, like it gives people the opportunity to like really hone in and just be there, instead of thinking, oh, maybe I should connect. Oh, I saw that person over there. That's, I mean, when you're at a networking thing and you see you're talking with them and you see their eyes moving around, that's typically the sign to say,
it's not a good feeling.
I think we should part ways now.
That's the worst. You run into those people that are just literally looking to connect with, oh, like, look who, he's got a pretty nice looking suit on. He must be somebody.
Yeah.
I was literally just at one last night. Some people were like that, For the most part, the people were good, but there were some people that you could just tell are there for, they're there to promote themselves and get their image out there. And I feel like it's weird that a lot of people don't realize that that's the wrong way to do it. Like you talk about, me from a broadcast side, like having scripted questions. I'm like, it doesn't really like vibe. Like people are going to see right through that BS. It's difficult for some people to accept imperfection sometimes, especially when they're doing their shows or doing an interview. Like you talk about, like even growing like your vision boards and stuff. You want it to be like, you're probably like in the nitty gritty, trying to make it as perfect as it could possibly be. But like the imperfection is what makes it like, that's the selling point right there. Nothing's perfect, but like we're trying our absolute best to perfectionize the imperfection, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, I think you say like imperfection, but I also think that another word, kind of what you're explaining, is authentic. I was gonna say
Authenticity.
Yeah, mixing those words up. But yeah, it's just like being who you truly are and not being perfect, because none of us are. I mean, what is perfect, right? But if you're just being yourself, you're doing your best. I think, as simple as that sounds, it's one of the most profound things that I've really internalized much more lately is like, do your best. That's it. And lose the expectation that it has to be this. It has to be like, I've fallen in that trap too, because again, it kind of comes back to like with the podcast of like, oh, this one got bigger and this one was better and we got this bigger guest and yada yada yada. But it's also like, okay, cool, we're growing, that's amazing. But it's more about like, okay, let's continue to just do our best and not have this expectation that, oh, because the last one had 200 people, the next one has to have 300 people, or we made this amount of sales and this one has to be this one. Like, just do your best and everything will work out.
Yeah, it's not an upward scale. Like you see all of those like graphs where it's just like up and down, sideways, horizontal, like going in loops. Like that's life. Even though if you don't see it that way, you're gonna look back and be like, oh, it was not. It was an uphill climb for sure, and there were a lot of setbacks. A lot of times where it's like I didn't even think I was gonna be doing that, and then all of a sudden you're doing something you never thought you'd be doing. Did you know growing up did you have any like goals and aspirations of what you wanted to be professionally?
Yeah, baseball player.
Baseball player. Okay. Did you play in college?
Yeah. There was, definitely thought at times there was that potential, but didn't pan out. And, I think, you typically, as long as you keep on listening to that intuition, you keep finding out what you're supposed to do. And I was supposed to be a baseball player.
So was it just like, obviously, maybe big fish in a small pond? It's very tough to get to that next level.
Yeah. Oh.
I mean, the talent you have to possess. Aaron Judge is proving it right now.
Yeah.
Like he's a once-in-a-lifetime player, with 61 home runs. No 4 or 5 guys, 2 or 3 without, any scandal issues and with steroids were able to do it,
Right.
Did you grow up in Arizona too?
No, Colorado.
Colorado. So you were a Rockies fan?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Trying to think, like Todd Helton was their big guy.
Yeah.
I grew up on Matt Holliday.
Oh, he's so good.
Incredible guy. Jeff Francis, do you remember that name?
Lefty pitcher.
Those core days with the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah, there's some legends in there, honestly. The Blake Street Bombers.
Yeah, exactly. And then they had that one World Series run in 07, and still trying to get back there ever since. I remember the Cargo days, Carlos Gonzalez.
He's good.
He was really good back in the day. You guys had Giambi there for a few years, I think.
Yeah, they've had some players. Pitching has been a challenge.
Yeah, you still a big fan?
Not so much.
Kinda died off?
It's kind of died off a little bit. I've just been a lot more focused on other things. Ever since I moved here, I wasn't hanging around with too many people that were big into sports. So again, coming back to whoever you surround yourself with.
It's cool though because it opens up a different side of you that like you're not like okay, like you're getting out of your comfort zone in the sense, and at the same time you're like I know that's there. I'm very knowledgeable in that, but like I'm becoming a different person. Different personality traits are starting to come out of me by surrounding myself with people, whether it be in business or like I remember like during COVID, like there was no sports, and me coming from a sports background and sports journalism, I'm like, what do I do now? Like growing this podcast, talking to entrepreneurs, musicians, getting into the film space too, completely different entity in its own right. So like there's all these different windows and all of these different opportunities that kind of form you into different personality traits almost.
Yeah.
Like, do you feel that sense of hanging around all of these different people who are all growing, but all in completely different ways?
Yeah, I mean, growth can look like so many different things, and growth isn't the same for everybody. And honestly, growth isn't even the same for you all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes growth is going backwards. And I come back to this a lot. I think we can learn so much from, coming back to the whole conversation around nature and plants specifically. And that's even kind of that's definitely where the podcast name came from. We were looking up at these trees and we're like, holy shit, these trees, they got it figured out. What do? They just grow every day. But what's interesting is I heard this a while back is that when a seed is in the ground and it sprouts, it initially looks like complete and utter chaos, right? It's an explosion, like there's just mayhem, but then it sprouts and it turns into something beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes growth is that. Sometimes it's utter chaos. Sometimes you can't tell what's up and what's down. But as long as you like make that commitment, that intention that you want to growing every day and get better every day, just even if it's a little bit, 1% better every day will lead to lasting change. But yeah, I mean, I think just being around people that inspire you. It doesn't mean that they have to be a podcaster. It doesn't mean they have to be this insane business person. But if they're committed to growth and they're wanting to expand and get better and be the best version of themselves, and you're around them, I'm constantly inspired by the people I'm around. I mean, I have some friends that are doing some really impressive things, but I mean, even if I don't want to ever put it on a scale, but like if someone's not doing something as, quote unquote, as impressive, it doesn't mean that it's any less valuable. Like I tell you what, like some of the people I've connected with, like I went to this workshop a while back, and there were some people that just wouldn't necessarily connect with, but I was kind of forced into they put us together, and sometimes those people are the people that I learned the most from. And I think that's a huge, huge thing that's shaped me a lot, is like not judging people and thinking that like, oh, I'm better than this person or I'm worse than this person. It's like we're all equal, and we can learn profound things from everybody. I truly believe that, and I think that kind of instills into the podcast as well. Just continually asking good questions will always lead to great answers.
I don't think you could truly get to know someone until you have like that sit down fire conversation where like you're able to like cook them for 45 to an hour and a half conversation of really opening up about the way they think about things, or like the experiences that they've gone through that kind of shape that mentality and that personality. Because like some of my closest friends in the world, when I first met them, I'm like, we're not gonna vibe at all. And then you get to know those people, I'm like, oh my god, like we mesh so well. And, like you wouldn't think, like buddy, soccer background, currently in the Air Force too. We didn't really have many like similarities. You didn't watch baseball. I'm a big pro wrestling guy. Do that. I read a lot. Like we didn't really have like too many similarities. Like my bestest friend in the world. And it just like, oh my God, like how did, like even to this day, still don't have too many similarities, but for whatever reason, you click because you're able to connect on that level of having like intimate conversation and really getting a better understanding of who they are and what their values are. And you take little pieces of that and you kind of like formulate it in your own life.
Yeah. I mean, and showing people that you care. Because again, coming back to like at a networking thing, people's eyes are darting around the room.
Yeah.
They obviously don't care about what you're saying, otherwise they'd be paying attention. And one of my friends he was one of the first guests on the podcast, first few episodes, he said that the most amazing thing I've ever heard, and it's probably the most profound thing I've ever heard, especially on the podcast. He said the person that you're with should feel like the most important person in the world, especially when you're by yourself. And that opens up a whole nother conversation, but like I'm really proud of myself when I hear people say like, I feel like you're like really listening to me. Or I feel like you're really here. You're present. You're in this moment. Rather than, because in today's day and age, kind of what we talked about with the beta brainwaves is so many people are they're thinking about a million things that is not here in the moment. And I would say like that's probably been my strong suit in terms of like interviewing people. And that's why people enjoy being on the podcast. They feel like I'm actually listening to them and caring what they have to say and listen. That's not real common from what I understand. And when you do that, you really separate yourself. And I can tell you're present. I mean, I think us interviewers or podcasters, whatever you want to call it, we get it, right? Because we're here, we're listening, we care, and we're curious. And so I think the more that we can inspire people to do the same, and just like be there when we're in a conversation, it can make the world of a difference in somebody. Someone might be having the worst day in the world. Maybe it's even somebody at the grocery store, someone that you wouldn't necessarily like conversate with, but you just look them in the eyes, smile, and say, "How's your day going? What's going on? You good?" Like that alone could shift someone's day right away. That might be the first person they've talked to in weeks. You never know, and it doesn't cost you anything. And I remember, I think it was at the event this past weekend. They were talking about when Joe Polish was talking about. He's a really, really successful guy, smart guy. He judges because there's so many people biting for his attention. He kind of like watches people and sees how they operate when they're not in his presence, because obviously they're in his presence. They want something from them. They're on their best behavior. How are they treating people that are like less powerful than them? How are they treating the guy holding the door open? How are they treating the janitor? And I think again, like it doesn't matter if you're a CEO or the janitor, like treat people the same. And I think that's always what things come back to for me is don't judge people and just treat everyone the same. And like that's where the beauty of life is just being a good person and showing people that you care and actually care.
Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to see in certain moments if someone rubs you the wrong way. Just like I wonder what they're going through because everybody's trying to make it in this world, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's got different goals, but the same goal of wanting to be happy first and foremost. You know.
Yeah.
So you never really truly know what people are going through, and I'm the same way. I feed off people's energy way better one-on-one than I would at like a networking party or even parties in general, you know, like having the opportunity to like sit down and listen to you have one-on-one conversations with a lot of people. Like that's the best part of the parties. And then like afterwards you're conversating with people who all share similar values. But at the same time, it's hard to have intimate conversation with people when there's like 200 people there, you know, like I'm like, let's get lunch. Let's get on the podcast where we can like sit down in a room by ourselves and I can actually get to know you.
Yeah.
And ask really cool questions based on what you're telling me.
Exactly. Yeah. I obviously feel 100% the same way. And I would say another thing is it comes back to, you know, social media and content and all that is figuring out the best way to leverage social media but not be so sucked into it because I find myself like connecting with so many amazing people even at these networking things and wanting to continue to go deeper than like constantly doing the DMs and whatnot. So that's something I'm continuing to figure out. But yeah, man, like I truly believe like that's where the beauty of life is, like really connecting. And I think at a core level, everyone, like we're social human beings. I think everyone's here to connect and share. And I don't care how introverted you are. I truly believe that like we're all here to connect.
Would you say you're introverted or outroverted?
What do you think?
You're soft spoken. So I think because I'm an introvert, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But like I said, one-on-one conversation, love that. If I'm at a party, it's like I'll find the one or two people I'm comfortable with,
Sure.
and then I'm probably with them the rest of the night. You know?
Yeah. That's such a interesting topic for me because I would have to say I was very introverted being raised or growing up. I think as I've grown and become more confident and charismatic and you know speak more and just have more conversations, I feel like I've started transitioning more towards the extroverted. I think I kind of do the dance. I go back and forth. Sometimes I'm feeling good and I love being around people and that really feeds me and charges me up. There's other times when I'm like, all right, that's enough of people for right now. I'm gonna just go chill by myself. So it kind of goes back and forth. But when I'm around really solid people, I don't think I can ever go wrong. So I would say maybe even more so. It's a dance, but I love just being around good energy. If that's me, great. If it's other people, great.
Do you find any of these people that you connect with, like you all have like similar hobbies that you do? Like when you go out and hang out with people, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. That's a really good question, and up until recently, I didn't necessarily have an answer for that because they're like,
Yeah.
what do you do for fun? I took a trip to Tulum a few months back to kind of just disconnect and get away from all this. And I was hanging out with this girl, and we were going to salsa dancing, and she's like asking me this, like, what do you do for fun? And I couldn't answer the question. I was like, damn, like that probably means I need to go have some more fun. So recently, the things I like doing is playing pickleball, and lately I've been doing swing dancing too.
Nice.
And it's interesting. I'm sure you can relate to this, but as an entrepreneur, you know, I think we can get really sucked into work. I know I can at least. But I have to schedule fun, otherwise it won't happen. So, yeah, I love being out in nature. Like I said, I'm going camping this weekend. But yeah, just sprinkling in and just having a few things I can go to. But yeah, I like being around people that have those similar hobbies. But I also like being around people that more so like it's more about like people that have the vision for me. Like,
Oh yeah.
who is really looking to be successful and make strong impact. That's the type of people I want to be around.
Like me personally, not in love with camping, but if it's with the right people, yeah, I'm gonna go because I know I'm gonna have great conversations with my deepest, closest friends. You know, like I'll suck it up and sleep in a tent for the night. We went last year in Flagstaff. It was like 20 degrees in the middle. I'm not sleeping. You know, I'm just like walking around. But I'm like, I'm with my friends. You know, like it makes it better as opposed to being with people that you kind of just like either just meeting or don't really vibe with. Like that ruins everything. You can go swing dancing with people you don't like. It's not gonna be fun. Right. You know, it's, you know, that double take of like doing stuff you love that you love to do, whether that's like growing your show or growing, you know, the relationships that you have. Because I feel like that's something that you consider fun, you know, growing your spirit, growing your business, growing your relationships, or other people will be like, well, that's just work. Like, not to me. Like, that's my definition of fun. As opposed to going snowboarding or going like to a trampoline park or whatever people do for fun, right?
I think it's a balance for sure. Have a lot of fulfillment within my work, and I think that's a really cool place to be. But I think it's important to like have that time to let go and just do silly things and be fun.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, like, you really, I know from personal experience that can happen where you just really get confined and you're not doing much and you're not feeling great.
Do you ever get to a point, because I've gotten to points where like I'm hanging out with my friends, I'm having a good time, I know I'm unplugging from everything that I'm trying to build, but then it gets back to that point where like, all right, I gotta be back on my laptop doing stuff or else like I'm gonna go crazy a little bit. And how do you kind of like stop yourself from doing that stuff? Because like that could be a little toxic too, but at the same time, like it is what you're trying to get to.
Well, here's my take is that I think it always comes back to like, what is your goal? What is your vision? What are you looking to accomplish? Do you have time restraints on that? Or, you know, all of that. But here's what I will say is that, you know, a lot of the, you know, you might be saying, oh, well, if you're not working, then that means that you're not growing, your business isn't growing. Well, for me, I sometimes believe in the opposite because I think these times that I go disconnect, go out into nature, go have fun, go do swing dancing, that adds so much value to my life because it raises my energy. It makes me feel good. And if I'm not feeling good, if I'm not present in the moment, if I'm stressed out and I'm not sleeping well, and I'm just always working, that gets me all strung out and I'm not feeling good. My energy isn't good. My energy dips, and then I'm just operating from a lower vibration, and that doesn't serve anybody around me, including my clients and podcast guests and whatever. So it's really important for me to like have those times to unplug because it like refuels the batteries. So again, it's a balance, and it also it really depends on like what are your goals and what are you going after. But for me, it's something I'm constantly thinking about is like, how do I continue to raise my energy and my battery? And if my battery's low, I got to go do things that raise it up.
Are these types of like what you're speaking about right now, are these types of practices implemented in some of these vision boards? Like when you're like working with people, like how do you put in the most energy in here and things that you love to do, and how do you take quick note of that? Okay, like this is firing me up right here, as opposed to like, I love this, but it's really draining me right now. Like, do you really take a deeper dive into that and take a look at those things?
Yeah, it's that's been a big journey for me lately, because I mean, this is the first time I've really been building an actual company and hiring people and letting people go and just like everything that comes with a company. And so what I've learned, and even from one of my mentors recently, he said, if you're not delegating, you're literally putting handcuffs on yourself, you're constraining yourself. So I think that's one of the biggest things is like find out what you're good at and find out what you're not good at, and find out what things that you can only do if you're the CEO and you're the person that's really guiding the ship. Like, what are the things that you can only do? And so like for me, like I have a strong intention lately is to like getting my team where we have the fulfillment on the vision videos completely, they've got it handled, so that way I can just go do speaking gigs, get on podcasts, do the selling, like doing all that stuff, because those are things that I can do. That's not something I can hire someone to go like, hey, go get the speaking gig for me. Like they can't do that, but someone can send DMs, someone can post this reel, someone can fulfill on the order, someone can reply to the customer that's having questions. So I think it's really important to figure out like what can you do and what fulfills you and you know, again, raises your energy, raises the battery, and double down on those, and then outsource and delegate the things that are not serving you and are not adding, they're just basically not helping the company grow as well as it could if you had the right people in place.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard like a ton of conversations that you've had with a ton of different people, like even like DC's background, just like American Ninja, like that's different from like Dylan's story or even Braxton's story or Michael's story, talking about like finance and how to make money, like, and I feel like everybody can take all of these different stories and experiences, kind of not pair them with their own. You don't want to like compare, but take them and be like, I probably could have thought about something like that in a completely different sense like they did in that given situation, whether it's through hardship or failure or picking yourself back up, and then implementing that with losing my train of thought here. It's like you have this unique opportunity to take bits and pieces from everybody's stories and implement them in your own life, because finances, no matter how much you don't want to like really dive deep into it when it comes to taxes and when it comes to really building and knowing how to monetize. Because if you don't know how to monetize, you don't really realize how many different avenues there are until you actually get into it, right? Yep. It's not like, oh, you get a job, they pay you. Or like if you're an entrepreneur, like you build relationships, you get partnerships, they pay to do that. Like, no, there's a lot of different like legal things too that you got to get into in order to build certain. I'm still learning it every single day. I'm kind of an idiot in that sense, like I'm like, oh my God, like I didn't realize how long this takes, how many months, how many years that this is going to take to grow and build and form these types of relationships and business plans. But do you see that like when you're building your community of people, not only are there different stories, but everybody can take bits and pieces from everybody's stories and bring them into their own lives, whether they want to bring those types of experiences into their own lives or whether they have to from a monetization standpoint?
I mean, I think the thing that you really touched on that was really good is playing the long game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's amazing, like what you're doing. That's why I was curious what your monetization strategy was before we hopped on.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you're building an audience, and that's an asset, and like it's even a sellable asset at some point. And I think a lot of people jump into podcasting or even business or really anything, thinking like, hey, let's make that quick money. Even like somebody, hey, I want to blow up on TikTok. I want to make one thing and it'll go viral. I was even talking to my barber about that, and he made a couple of his first clips he made on TikTok went viral. And then he's like, I started making a bunch more, and then they didn't go viral, and I was like, this is dumb.
Yep.
But it's just like, it doesn't, like it, I think that's a really great point and a great way to think about things is like, even if I quote unquote go viral on the first one, it doesn't matter. It matters that I keep going. There's a quote in one of the songs I really like. It's not about who got here first. It's about who stays.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way I see things. Just from like a vision standpoint, like what is going on, what is going down in 10 years, 20 years, 30, 50 years. They talk about in Japan, Michael shared this with me. He said in Japan, the shortest business, the business plan is 100 years. So they're already thinking long term. And I think that puts you in a really powerful position because like, Jack, you're not making this podcast and hoping that this episode goes viral and then you make a bunch of money off this. You're saying, no, I'm going to make 100 episodes. I'm going to make 200 episodes, 300 episodes. I'm going to make whatever. I don't know what exactly your goal is, but you have that long-term strategy to say like, I'm going to make this happen because of the fact that I have the long-term vision and it's going to pan out because I keep on building relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key. Like, I truly believe that relationships are the new currency because you build the people build the business or whatever. Like, can you imagine how many people you're going to have in your pocket in 2 years to say like, oh, I'm having this challenge building this website. Do you know anybody that can help me out? Oh yeah, of course, Jack, I'll help you out. Okay, do you know anybody that would be interested in doing a sponsorship on my podcast?
Yeah.
Like, you have, and that's why, again, I come back to why it's so important to build these relationships and do it from an authentic place, not just like being so strategic where it's like, all right, I see this guy as a referral partner. Let's make sure and build that relationship and get him on the podcast and make him feel real good. Obviously, there is a strategy and there's a balance of being an authentic person having strategy, but I truly believe that like you build those relationships and it'll all pan out the way it's supposed to.
No, I mean, it goes back to like that one guy DMing you, like wanting to come on your show, but like there was no real vibe there. Like it's not like it was like you respected what he was doing and vice versa, you know? Like I invite you on because I see what you're doing and it's inspiring and I want to learn more about it, you know? Because you want to feed off of that energy and see why it makes you so happy to do what you're doing and how I could be a part of that, you know? Like you don't have people on, like I have people in the DMs are just like, dude, let's blow up together. I'm like, what does blow up mean?
That's a good
Like,
question.
what does that mean to you? You know, and like there's a lot of people in the entrepreneurial space. It's like, I'm looking to blow up. I'm like, and there's a lot more behind it. They're just saying blow up. It's just like, oh, I'm looking to really inspire people and influence. And obviously, the more money you make, the more opportunities you have for other people. And there are some people that are very good like that. There are also some people that are very just in it for themselves.
Sure.
You talk about like people trying to be like TikTok famous. We had kids growing up who became Vine famous, you know? Vine. It was like around for like a year, you know? But there's other people who are just like, I'm looking to be famous. And it even like makes me cringe using that word. It's like, that doesn't, the people that are out there, like you talk about celebrities, like the movie stars, like DiCaprio or Brad Pitt, like they're there because they love what they do and they happen to be like, they got really, really good at it because that was their life calling, right? And all these different factors come into it, you know, like you have the paparazzi, do the red carpet events, you have the premieres, and people look at that and be like, it must be nice, you know, it must be nice to be a movie star. But it's like they really worked hard at it, you know, like that's their craft.
Yeah, and that's like something that they actually want to do and they're passionate about it.
Like it ain't about being famous. People who are famous got really good at what they did and they got the right eyeballs on them.
And I think that fame is an outdated construct too. I don't think human is designed to be famous. And I feel like I've had little glimpses of it, and it's I don't know, it's something that's not easy. Like when I was talking about, I had all those people like waiting in line to talk to me and like shower me with compliments. And it was like something I've always desired to have, but like once I got it, I was like,
how many of those feel genuine and how many of those are just like they're like kissing your ass?
I would say the majority of them are genuine,
especially
sure.
after a show.
Yeah, honestly, I'd probably say all of them. It's interesting. I don't feel like I ever really, I mean, knock on wood, I haven't been attracting people that are just like trying to, you know, social climb or whatever you want to call it. But it became a little overwhelming, and I think I kind of started reverting back a little bit more to my introvertedness on those moments. Is like they're just showering me and saying how amazing I am. I was like, I don't even know who you are. Like, this is crazy. But like, I think it's, you know, again, why do people want to get famous? They want that attention. They want to feel the validation. But I mean, you talk to anybody that's famous, and they're like, it's not like the healthiest thing. I mean, you look at like a Justin Bieber or Miley Cyrus that
oh my God, you saw they went through that
and
too.
Didn't have the mental capacity to like even take that on. So it's like, why do you want to be famous? And then like you have to realize that there's definitely a lot of people that are quote unquote famous that are broke, and they don't have a plan. Like, okay, let's say you even do get 1 million followers. What are you gonna do with that? Like, is that it? Because it takes I was even listening to a podcast recently about a guy that coached Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. I'm forgetting his name right now. He wrote the book Relentless. Tim Grover. He's like, do you know the type of person that you need to become in order to have 1 million followers? Because there's a lot that comes with that. There's going to be a lot of showering you with compliments. There's going to be a lot of people that are not genuine and authentic and are just trying to, you know, capitalize on you. There's going to be a lot of people hating on you. It's not easy. So it's like, why do you actually want to be famous? So I really think, and that again, that's just kind of why I'm building the podcast the way I am, is like, and why I want to make it organic. I don't want to just like, you know, quote unquote blow it up. I want it to be like real. And I think that's the key, is like having like solid, tight communities. Doesn't mean that they have to be even 10,000, 100,000 people, but if like you have a solid community of 100 people, you can do so much greatness with that from an impact level, but at even a monetary level.
I've had a few friends where it's like, I'd love to blow up, and I'm like, you wouldn't survive. You have no idea what you're doing. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But that was so well put too. Like it's you grow up, you see people on TV, you think, oh, that's the life. They're making millions. So you don't realize they're just like everybody else. You're just glorified because you have cameras in front of you.
Yeah.
But like some of those people, like dead ass, like you're making more money than some of them. Like and you don't even realize it. You don't realize they could be broke financially. They could be broke mentally with all of that toll that's going into what they're doing. There's been scandals that have been broken about some people that none of it was true. It's just like all hyper BS to get some sort of political thing across. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but like we've seen it. Like people wrongly accused of stuff, and like that takes a mental toll on you.
It can break you, man. I learned recently, a few months back, of like what what someone that has a really big following goes through.
Yeah.
It's crazy too, because like there was this lady that was on one of the reality shows on Netflix, and they would post, and it was crazy. Like they would post something that would just seem like not a big deal at all, around like it was something about bunnies, and then someone from like I think it's called the PETA organization came in and thought it was like animal cruelty, and then they posted something about it, and then I got an article written on this big publication, and then they had to like take it down. Like you're under a microscope when you have an audience like that, and they can turn on you quick. Like the internet is very unforgiving. Like they'll say it's a wild world out there, and so if you have a lot of eyeballs on you, like it's a whole different ballgame. So be careful what you ask for, because you typically get it.
Have you seen anybody go through that, like within your community, or like getting to that point where it was just like, oh, I wonder like what he or she's going through right now?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it a little bit. I used to have an Instagram growth agency, so I got a pretty in-depth look at it, and I think I fell into that quite a bit, and I think that's even was like my first taste of like this quote unquote, like I would say like it's kind of a weird word, but like local fame, because like that's all I was ever known for. And I'd like go out, even in Old Town, like people would come up to me, my friends were like, how do you know all these people? I'm like, I don't know, they just know me from Instagram. Because I would like build up these pages for clients, and it was working really well. Like we were getting people a lot of exposure, even some business owners were like closing deals off of this stuff. But it's interesting because like you start getting all those likes, and you start getting conditioned to it. I don't care who you are, but like if you receive that type of like I think it was Steve Wynn that said any behavior that gets validated gets repeated. So what I mean by that is that like you make a post that gets 5,000 likes, like that's validated. You're like, oh, when I make a post, I get a bunch of likes like that. But then what happens, the algorithm starts changing. This happens with every single platform, is when you start out, it's really good. Like you make a post, you get 100 likes, and then you keep on growing a little bit, you get more likes. But what does the platform do eventually? Eventually, they're going to throttle that down, because they have like the drug dealer model, right? They want to like keep giving you the good stuff until like you're hooked, and then they start taking it away. That's exactly what happens, and that's even comes back to what I was saying before, where the guy posted and he went viral on the first one. That's what these platforms are designed to do, so that they hook you, they get you really excited, and you stay on. But the reason I'm saying all this stuff is because when you get conditioned to that, I don't care who you are, you start not feeling great about yourself when those likes go down. And I went through that. I think it was a really interesting and a great learning lesson for me to like all of a sudden like went from getting thousands of likes to it starts dropping and dropping and dropping. And I, as much as I would say, hey, I'm doing it for the audience, this is what they want, it was an ego play.
You feel like a little piece of you is like, I'm putting in all of this work, and like 400 people saw the post. It's like, but the last one got like 12,000,
right?
And you're like, what's the big deal here? This is just as valuable.
And it comes back to that whole the social dilemma. That's still like scary as hell to think about that. But they showed in one of the scenes, there was this little girl. She posted a picture, a selfie. It got like 2 likes. Then she deletes it, posts it again, but puts a filter on it, and gets like 20 likes. So it's literally training you to hide yourself
Yeah.
and be inauthentic, because that's that's what gets rewarded and validated. That's scary.
And filters aren't even cool, man. For the most part, it's like I don't want to see something that's so fake.
Yeah. Well, I think the good news is that I think the world is changing and people are waking up. There's a lot more podcasts with people having conversations like this. There's people plugging in, listening, starting their own podcast, having these conversations. And I think the world is changing in a positive direction. I think it's going to take some time, but I think the fact that everyone does have a platform and can start a podcast, they can go live on Instagram and speak their thoughts. And the more that we educate people and help people understand like what is truth and what is real, as opposed to like this like fake world we've been living in for a while, I think we're trending in the right direction. Again, I think it's going to take time, and especially with all the other nonsense going on in this world, that could be another podcast episode. But I think we're starting to trend in the right direction, and people are waking up and having these conversations that are really going to change the world. And I think that's what's so powerful with podcasts, is like one conversation can change the world, because it creates this ripple effect.
You never know which conversation or which topic or even like which clip you make, just to kind of go back to social media, putting stuff out there, is really going to hit and really touch someone. Because like we've probably both been through it, where like a couple people, maybe a dozen people reach out that were inspired by it. You're going to get that one thing that really like, God, I don't want to use the term blow up, but like you're going to get like hundreds of thousands of people being like, oh my God, like we've never heard it from this perspective before. It doesn't matter what the topic is or what the story is. Like you talk about like not getting as many views. Like someone might have an unbelievably inspiring story, but they don't have a big platform, and Instagram picks up on that, and it's just like it's not plugged. Like it's not put out there. Like the algorithm doesn't recognize. Like I still am trying to figure out how like the algorithm and all that stuff works, because you do have like a ton of really good content out there. Like a lot of people have a lot of really cool talents and a lot of cool messages that are being put out there that aren't being picked up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that even goes into a more of a marketing conversation, because I think a really big thing is if you want to, we've been just saying the word blow up, but if you technically want to blow up, like you have to get good at marketing. You can't just, and marketing is not just keep on posting content. It is to a degree, but like having a strategy behind that too. Because when I was doing my Instagram growth agency, I always told people it's like there's content, which is one side of it, but then there's a strategy to grow the platform too. It's not one and the same. Nowadays it kind of is, because it's a volume game, and the more like you have to put out a mass amount of content to really start growing. That's another whole other conversation. But yeah, I think the better that you can get at marketing and learning how these algorithms work, and I don't think you're ever really going to truly understand it, because they're always changing and evolving, but the more that you can understand marketing and you have a good message, which kind of brings us full circle to what we talked about in the beginning, then that's when you win. You have a good message and you know how to get that message out.
So what's the next message you get now? Next guest? Do you have another live show on the horizon?
Yeah, it's on the horizon. We have I just connected with somebody at the event last weekend that potentially could be the next guest, but we actually haven't even had too much of a discussion around that. Haven't put anything on the books yet. Right now, the vision videos are the main focus, and getting that whole system dialed in. Once we get those, and it's close, like I told you, it's really close to just being able to just hand that off to my team. They take care of it, boom. And then it's go time for me to just get on a bunch of podcasts, keep doing more podcasts, keep doing more events, probably eventually throw a retreat too. I did one in August that was really powerful for a few people that came, and starting to realize that's where a lot of impact and growth comes from, just having those like more intimate settings as opposed to hundreds of people. But yeah, the vision videos are the focus right now, because that's what's monetizing all this, and that's what's adding revenue to this, so that we can keep growing it and make everything better. So that's the focus right now. And yeah, we're showing Blake and Michael's vision video at their event right before Meltzer comes on, and that's when I'm going up to speak. So that's pretty much where my attention is right now, making their video the best we possibly can, and just make sure that we're ready for potentially a good amount of orders come through.
Providing that value through the authenticity. It's a hard balance to find, but I think you found it. I really think that's going to be a game changer, what you got going on there with the vision boards. Like, I've really never seen anything like it, just like looking through those videos. Like, how long did it really take? Because obviously, like, all the experiences of, like, bringing it all together, but, like, to find that specific form of technology, like, how long did that take you?
I mean, that's part of the whole wild story of all this. Dylan actually, because someone sent me a video right after one of the first podcast events. It's like it might have been the second one. And they sent me this video, this guy walking out on the stage, and he was in front of like probably 30,000 people-ish. And then they sat down on a couch, had the mics, did a podcast. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. Because I saw that, I'm like, that's the vision right there. And so I started watching that. I was like, I kept watching it. And then I actually downloaded the video. I put my branding on top of it to make it feel more real. And then I had a conversation with Dylan, and I showed him, and he's like, that's probably not the only thing that you want.
Nope.
And I boom, right there, the idea came. And I was like, vision boards, but turn them into videos. And like, I didn't even know exactly how I was going to do it 100%, but I was like, I had the idea of like, because, you know, when you look at a vision board, it doesn't really evoke much emotion. But when I watched that video for the first time, it gave me chills. And I was like, that's what I want. Like, I felt like it was gravitating towards me more. And I know this because I've studied visualization and manifestation for a long time. And in my baseball career, I had some crazy experiences, like hitting a home run off the 7 on the scoreboard, the first pitch of the last inning. I saw that all in my mind before it happened. And then it did. And so I knew that all this stuff was real. I've had some very powerful experiences. So when I see that, you know, clip and it like really gives me chills, I knew that that's actually coming to me quicker. And so, yeah, then I had that idea right there. We were up in Flagstaff, had a cabin. I came home. It took me about probably 20 hours to put it together. But then I started watching, like, everything about it, like, it brought me to tears. It still does. Like, I watch it every day. Like, we have voice notes in there from friends and family. That's like one of the people's favorite part about all of this. But then we talk about like the challenges that you've gone through, all the stuff that you overcome, the wins and successes to like really build you up and make you feel good about yourself. And then we start talking about the vision, about like, oh, the places you want to travel, the cars, the relationships you want to build, the impact, the businesses, whatever it is. But I think it's so important to get yourself to a place where you're really feeling good about yourself. And then you start thinking about the vision. But it's also important to like really emotionalize it. And that's why we put the, you know, kind of emotional music on the background so that it's just like it hits harder. Because music is a frequency, right? It's energy. So yeah, that's kind of like a long-winded answer to your question.
No, do people pick the music behind it? Obviously, certain songs trigger certain people, what they listen to.
It's interesting. We've been studying more of the science behind it, and it's really interesting because I'm every day I'm more inspired and encouraged on what we're doing because it's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
But we have a specific track we've been using, but what we're also starting to realize at the end, we put together a montage of like it's like a highlight reel at the end, and we put one of their favorite songs in there so that they're basically conditioning themselves to like think about their future whenever they hear that song. And then I think what we're going to do too is we're going to play that in the beginning, just like the instrumental track. So it's kind of a combination at this point where it's like their favorite song, but then in the majority of it, it's mostly just like a really hard-hitting, emotional track.
Really like get that like spine tingling feeling, like you said, goosebumps almost. Like, oh my
Not
God.
even almost, but like literally. I made my first one in February. And I mean, I've made iterations to it, but still, like, I watched it this morning. Of course, I watch it every day, pretty much every day. And yeah, it still like brings me to tears, especially during the voice notes. Like, I hear people telling me how amazing they are, how amazing I am. They're telling how much I've impacted their life. You know, there's this one of my really good friends. He gave me the best compliment I've ever heard, and he said, "When Nick gets better, everyone else gets better." And that just reminds me, like, I'm doing this for myself, but I'm also doing this for the people. And I'm like, if that statement really is true and I believe him, then it's selfish for me to not like grow this and make it the best and impact as many people as I possibly can, because I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Like I obviously want to have my level of success that I've been dreaming about for a while, but I help, just what I was telling you before is I had a client that told me literally today he added another like 13K in revenue.
Yeah.
Since monthly revenue since watching the vision videos, and just like very nonchalant. He was in Italy and he closed 3 clients just like, and it was interesting because I remember hearing someone say like, how do you really build a really successful business? He's like, you help people, you just help you, because he was talking from a marketing standpoint, but he was helping people make a lot more money. So he's like, that justifies me charging 10K a month. If I'm helping you make 100K a month, why would you not pay me 10K a month? So that's perspective I'm seeing, because we're going much more like a little bit more in the entrepreneur route, because everyone wants to make money, and so we're kind of gearing a little bit more towards that. But I mean, we've had testimonials of obviously people making more money, but people finding dream relationships kind of like out of nowhere. This one gal, she lost 4% body fat in a few months. Like, it just, whatever you want, it just attracts it in. It's crazy, and I've never seen anything like this.
And you're going to be talking about this at the event on the 19th.
Yep.
Well, definitely check that out, guys, because even like put Blake and Michael aside, and even David, all due respect, like that, you're a great opener to be talking about this. Like that's going to be a really cool event in Peoria.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I love going to events, especially with people that I really support, and I support Blake and Michael, and I know they're onto some big things, and I'm excited to hear David Meltzer's story. I've always heard great things about him, so it's going to be a really fun event. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, if you guys are in the area, you can meet Nick in person, talk about everything he's got going on. The Just Grow podcast, we got the merch, the T-shirts, the wristbands, and every single time you meet someone, you got to give them a shirt, because that's going to spread the message. And they're like, what's Just Grow podcast? And then you meet the community, you meet everybody involved, you meet all of their different stories. If you're intrigued enough, big things could happen for you from a mental standpoint.
Yeah, it's exciting to see what we're building, and I mean, we're like just a little more than a year in on the podcast. With the videos, it's only been, we launched it at the end of March, or somewhere right there. So just a few months in, like, and if we're talking about long-term business plan, like, those in Japan, we're infants right now, so it's gonna be exciting to see what happens.
I'm excited to see the next live show you guys got going on, all over the place. YouTube channel?
Yeah, YouTube channel.
Just Grow?
We switched it to Just Grow Visions. So that's the vision video company. So everything's kind of more so underneath Just Grow Visions. Then we have the podcast, and then the retreats, and we got a bunch of stuff in store, but yeah.
Well, we got Just Grow Visions. Check them out on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, do what you got to do to the podcast. I appreciate you coming on, Nick. We could talk about like marketing, social media for like days on end. We're gonna have to do that again
for like 10 hours.
We'll do that on the next 4 or 5 shows that we do. But this was episode 541, guys. He's a busy man, so I'm gonna get him out of here. It's kind of a nice. It's a nice studio, Demon Studios.
Yeah,
which is a very, very interesting name. Thanks to Demon Studios for having us out. Check out this episode, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out TickPick as well, guys. Capital OSHOW 20 for that $20 off promo. Postseason baseball is coming around. The Rockies won't be in, but Aaron Judge and the Yankees will be. Pursuit of 62. I hope it happens, man. Check it out.